Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. However you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you listen, wherever you're listening. It's the Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast. And it is game week. Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast brought to you by betonline.ag. Go to betonline.ag, get all your live stats, up-to-date odds, spreads, everything you need. Put in promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, and you get a 50-cent match bonus. Also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Visit the Underdog Fantasy app. Put in promo code USC LAFB. Get a $100 match. We're with the madman. Ryan Dyru's out on vacation on the most important week of the world. It's here. It's finally here. We've been waiting. We've been throwing shows together, but now we finally have something to talk about. The lives are coming back. Hopefully a bunch of victory Sundays. Hopefully get a victory Monday. It is here. It is game week. Madman, how are you doing today?
Dun 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 dun. It is finally here, Coach. After 9 months, we are a mere 72 hours away from kickoff. 9 months in the making here, so could not be any better, Coach, than where we are right now. Can't wait to jump into it, and can't wait to preview an actual game, actual matchups, but then also after Sunday, really start talking about ball in its entirety and what's actually going on the field. So couldn't be more happy and so thrilled to be doing this with you.
This is where I shine. You know, the comments been killing me. I don't prep well and this and that. I don't care about the offseason stuff.
Our listeners love you, Coach. Come
let's
on
talk,
now.
Let's talk X's and O's. Let's talk about
let's talk X's and O's.
Let's talk about
Jimmy's and Joe's. You know, that's Coach Rowe.
Did you know Georgia Tech broke the football world last week and nobody even noticed it? Totally. Georgia Tech was running RPO for midline last week. That's why Florida State was struggling. Like, they were legit running RPO for midline. I've never seen that before, and they were killing them. I was like, oh, man, people are going to copy this, and we're going to see a bunch of RPO for midline. That is insane. But neither here nor there.
Well, Coach, you must be in a great mood right now because not only are we about to talk about USC Trojans football, but last I checked, just a few minutes before us going on air, North Dakota State 10, Colorado 7. 4 minutes to go in the first quarter. So if North Dakota State pulls off a shocker in Boulder, I mean, that's only going to be the cherry on the Sunday for Coach Rowe. We know what a huge Colorado Buffalo Coach Prime fan he is, second only in his heart to the mighty Oregon Ducks. So, it's the gift that keeps on giving, Coach.
It was expected, though. That's not even a surprise to me. People sleep on North Dakota State like they've done this before, and they beat Division I schools before. They have been asked to come and play in Power 5 conferences.
Totally.
And they said, no, we're going to stay where we are. They make very good business decisions, and they're going to keep succeeding there. But neither here nor there. Allegiant Stadium, Sunday evening, because they play 5 o'clock, Sunday evening, the Trojans take on the LSU Tigers for the annual kickoff. I actually saw a pretty cool shirt. It said the beach versus the bayou. Like, I kind of liked that. That was pretty good.
Great shirt.
The beach versus bayou was great. Let's talk about this. Let's talk before we never had a chance to do it. Before we jump into this preview, let's talk about expectations for this season, right? And I've been thinking about this for a long time. And some people might not agree with me, but my expectations for this season are not high. And when I tell you they're not high, they're actually ground level. They're below ground level. They're right above what you call laying the underground utilities and above grading. Lincoln Riley made a mistake, and I shouldn't say he made a mistake. I think what happened his first year happened so fast that he was excited about it, and it was unexpected. And then he thought it would repeat his second year, and he never laid a foundation. And I think he's such a competitor, and he's a realist with himself, because there's a lot of things we say he need to work on it, and believe it or not, he worked on them, right? I think this year is the foundation year. The way he's recruiting, the way he's picking guys up, this is the foundation year. And you see a lot of things where people are like, SC can go 10-2. We don't want SC to go 10-2 because you're setting the ceiling low. We need to set the ceiling high. I would not be, and let me, how can I say this? If it's competitive games and they put a good product on the field, I would not be upset with a record like last year. And let me tell you, like, near misses, losing by 3. You could tell they're young. Like, oh, they're coming. They're just one player away or one more year of experience. They could get this done. I'll take that product any day because they need to lay a foundation. Now, I will say this. Fast forward to 26, 10-2 is underachieving. You get what I'm saying? So 25 season, 26, 10-2 is underachieving. I expect a foundation year this year from USC. And from the coaches' talk and the deception that Lincoln Riley's putting out, this is his foundation year. Unfortunately, he's doing it 2 years too late, right? He should have been doing this year 1. The Caleb situation we'll give him that pass, but he should have did it last year, and he didn't do it. He tried to just jump right into it and get Caleb a back-to-back Heisman. All I want to see is a good product. I want to see players developing. I want to see players getting better. I want to go into the offseason and be like, boy, these Trojans are going to be hell to deal with. You know what I mean? Like, and I have to set realist expectations to get realist results. If I set unreal expectations, I'm not going to get real results, and I'm just disappointed myself. I now become a Raiders and a Dallas Cowboys fan. So those are the things that I'm expecting from the season. I expect that wide receiver group to be awesome. I also expect a lot of running yards this year. But the most important thing I want to see, I at least want to see above average defense. Not great, not excellent, not very good, just above average, and grow from there. And if I see that this year, we get 9 wins and we see improvement, I'm okay going into the offseason because we could build on that and we know which way we're going. We need to trend up. We need to become a very bullish stock, right? If we become a bear stock, we're no good. And we need to become a bullish stock, and we need to stay rising, and we need our candlewick to keep going up in the green. What are you expecting this year, Jamal?
Yeah, Coach. I mean, it really, really well said. I think if I could summarize what you're saying, it's go slow to go fast, right?
Yeah.
And if you go too fast too early, you may be at the risk of cutting corners, cheating development, really sort of going through the process in a very genuine way. And so I think that's a little bit what happened. There was kind of that fool's gold from year 1. We had a couple bounces go our way against Oregon State, a lot of turnovers. Remember that Stanford game early, Oregon State game, all of a sudden now 6-0. And, it sort of rode itself to, a situation where they were on the doorstep of a college football playoff appearance. And then obviously year 2, nothing changed. And it was regression to the mean. All those bounces that they got year 1, they didn't get. The ball kind of bounced the other way. It corrected. And then that went from doorstep to college football playoff to doorstep of almost missing a bowl game altogether. And so that's really the ebb and flow that we saw. I agree with you, Coach. I think this is in many ways the foundational year as you described it. And he's done all the right things in the offseason in terms of the emphasis on the trenches, in terms of player development, both in the weight room as well as on the field, in terms of the coaching staff, primarily on the defensive side of the ball, and all of the superstar positional coaches that Lincoln Riley has been able to get. Then when you look at the off-the-field situation, NIL, House of Victory becoming the de facto destination for USC partnerships and monetary arrangements. And, you see kind of a Jen Cohen rally around Lincoln Riley as you would expect her to do. So the boat is definitely rowing in the right direction, Coach. I will say the ultimate recruiting tool, the ultimate momentum tool, though, is to see results on the field that will get this going in the right direction. And so for me, Coach, I'm looking at this, again, similar to you in terms of improvement. I look at this as sort of a 9-3 football team this year. I think that there's about 4 tough games on paper. You got, obviously, LSU, Michigan, Notre Dame, Penn State. I think those are going to be 4 tough games. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation about those teams' abilities to score. Some of those games are at home. There's a lot there, but I think there's sort of a toughness and a mentality to those teams that those 4 are going to be kind of dogfights. And I expect USC to go about 2-2 in those 4 games. And then that leaves the other 8, if you will. And I think SC is going to go 7-1 in those other 8. I think they're going to get on a run, be able to win a lot of those other games. They'll get tripped up somewhere. I think just, a ball may not go their way. And then I think you're looking at a 9-3 season and right on the fringe of a possible college football playoff berth. And I think if this was a 9-3 season, Coach, I think everybody will feel really good about going into year 4 for Lincoln Riley 2025, which I believe is the make it or break it for Lincoln Riley. Because I believe in today's college football, given how quickly you can get things turned around with a transfer portal, given the immediacy that you can get with NIL, if you cannot become a perennial contender, a perennial threat at a place like USC, now that the playoff is in the top 12, where the expectation begins at making the playoff in year 4, if you can't do that in 4 years, you're either not an elite coach or you're not at an elite program, or both. And so I think that next year then becomes the ultimate litmus test, where we really have to hold his hand and head and arms and feet to the fire moving forward. But I think if they can go 9-3 this year, I think it really sets up 25 very nicely. If they can beat that, even better. And I think it's going to create this mountain of momentum, particularly in recruiting in the offseason. If they fall short, Coach, of 9-3, I think doubts are going to start coming up. I think there's going to start becoming questions about this team, this program, this coach. If he can't if it's 8-4 or worse, I think there's going to be some serious questions moving forward. I think he'll undoubtedly come back for 2025, regardless of what happens. But I think there's going to be some questions and doubts. So, Coach, I got them at 9-3. I think this is going to be a much better offense than people realize without Caleb Williams. Everyone just sort of expecting the sky to fall down nationally without the Heisman Trophy winner. I think there's going to be a structure. I think there's going to be a cadence. I think there's going to be a rhythm. I think there's going to be a balance to this offense in many ways that we have not seen. I think we're waiting to see who's going to be wide receiver 1 emerging. We all believe it's going to be Branch, but that's got to play itself out. And then we're going to see in that running game if Woody can kind of grab the bull by the horns the way Marshawn Lloyd did last year and really kind of solidify that running game. And then, of course, Miller Moss building on that momentum. So I think the offense with Lincoln Riley, you never have to worry about. You can sort of pencil them in for 40 a game. The question is going to be, can they score whenever they want to and when they absolutely need to and got to have it on big third downs, big drives? That's going to decide a lot of games. And then, of course, defensively, what is the translation of all of this weight gain in the trenches and all of this emphasis in the trenches? 1,400 pounds, the likes of Anthony Lucas, the likes of Braden Shelby, the likes of Jade Abisari, the likes even of Bear Alexander getting really focused and engaged. How is this going to sort of translate on the field? And then, of course, in that secondary, everyone they got from Ramsey to Humphreys to Arnold to Richardson, how is this all going to sort of play out moving forward? I think we're expecting a wildly improved defense and an offense that's going to be a lot more structured moving forward. So can they get enough stops? Can they score when they absolutely need to? That's going to decide these games. I got them going at 9-3, Coach. I'm very excited about it.
So so I'm actually this first question. I'm gonna get to my point, and then we'll move on to this week's game prep. Would you take 10-3 or 9-4?
Obviously 10-3, right? 10-3 is better than 9-4.
Yeah.
So you definitely want more. More is more here, Coach.
Yeah. The last loss really doesn't matter though, because people don't put as much focus into it depends where they are at the bowl game, right?
Yeah.
Would you take a 9-4 first round loss, or would you take a 9-4 bowl game loss?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question, Coach. I think the question sort of in many ways becomes, would you take them at sort of 9-4 where they went 8-4 in the regular season and needed that 9th game to win, they needed the bowl game to win the 9th game? Mm-hmm. Or do you take them perhaps at 9-3 to get into the playoff, lose the first round at 9-4? I would take the latter. I mean, I think the opportunity to play against the best, play in that absolute elite competition, I would much rather this team make the playoff and lose in the first round than win a mediocre bowl game. Because now at this point, Coach, anything that isn't the playoff, all the big bowl games in terms of their locations, their vicinities are all tied to the different rounds of this playoff. So basically, if you don't make the playoff, no other bowl game matters. I mean, it's sort of the death of the bowl season in many ways. I don't think a lot of people are going to put much stock into the bowl season this year unless it's their team and they're sort of diehards. But I think the average fan in college football obviously will always watch because football is sort of in our blood. But there's really going to be a divide there in terms of the haves and the have-nots, in terms of those teams that made the playoff and those that did not. So if you're asking me, 9-4 with a first-round bowl loss, a first-round playoff loss, or 9-4 with a mediocre bowl trophy, I would absolutely take 9-4 with the playoff loss.
Yeah, I got you. No, it was 10-3 with the 10-3 with a mediocre bowl win, or 9-4 with a first round loss.
Yeah, I would do 9-4 for sure.
Yeah. And so you brought up a couple of good points. Defensively, right? Are they this year defensively? Can they make stops when it matters, right? And Ryan always made a good point. Ryan said this about 2 years ago. All they need is 4 stops, and they never got the 4 stops. That's probably the best thing I've ever heard anybody say. And the year with Caleb, they got the 4 stops at times, and at times they didn't get stops. The go to defense is get off the field on third down, right, and make a stop when it matters. You know what I mean? There's also other goals, put them in bad situations, make them throw the low percentage pass. There's a bunch of stuff we get into, but the core of it is, can you get off the field on third down, which they couldn't do last year? And you know me, that was one of the most frustrating, like another third down, like come on. And can you make the stop when you need to stop? I.e. Utah game. You make that stop in Utah, you win. You don't know how the season goes, right? So those are the stick out questions. I think you make those stops, recruiting gets better, because there was rumors. We don't know. I should, but we know there were rumors saying that people didn't want to go play for Grinch, right? We saw how the recruiting defensively flipped once we got Coach Lynn. So the stops matter. And on offense, the question becomes, can you control the game? And that's one of the biggest issues I think Lincoln Riley has with his offense. And there's a lot of air raid guys. That's their offense. They never really control their game. They always get into, I'm going to outscore you. Can you get, and I'm good with that. But at one point, can you get into the point to where, like last year, UW, they had a lead on UW, but they never wanted to control the game. They wanted to go and score. Sometimes you just got to eat the clock. Sometimes you got to take some time off the clock and just control the game and let them know, hey, I got control on this. And what people don't understand is that's a big mental factor. You know what I mean? Like, they went down and drove the ball and they took 6 minutes off the clock. Oh, we held them to 3. Doesn't matter. They still got 3 points on the board. And we only got this much time left. Like, you know what I mean? Like, can Lincoln Riley control the game this year? Can the defense make the big stop? Those 2 things flip the season just like that. And we may be looking at 10-3, like, hey, we made the playoff. It doesn't matter. We was an 11 seed. We got in. Right? We made another turnaround. We got in. How much better can we get? So can they make the big stop? Can they control the game? Those are the 2 big things I'm looking for. What about you, Jamal?
Yeah, Coach. I mean, I think the controlling the game point is really excellent, because if you recall 2 years ago, all 3 of those losses, both the Utah games as well as the Tulane game, those were games SC was up big in the first half, first quarter, 21-7, 24-7, 28-14. And I think that Lincoln and the air raid guys really struggle with the leads, because you're still putting sort of the pedal to the metal. And what you don't realize is when you have a lead, you actually want to shorten the number of possessions. And so you want to be able to take more clock, because it leaves less time, less possessions in the game. If you just come back and score and then the other team comes back and scores again, you're just sort of trading scores. And in many ways, the pressure remains on you to keep scoring. What you want to be able to do with a lead, the whole purpose of a lead is to transfer the pressure onto your opponent. And oftentimes with air raid teams, that transference of pressure never actually exists, because they're constantly focused on scoring. And then what happens is when you invariably get stopped and when the other team scores, now it's a 1 possession game, but they have all the momentum. And then it becomes kind of this snowball domino effect. So I'm totally with you, Coach. You looked at last year with Washington, that was the case. Even a little bit with Notre Dame early, that was the case. Even a little bit with Utah early. Utah kind of took the lead. SC came back. But, even in those stretches, there were moments there where I think SC could have repositioned itself over the course of the game and been successful. Even the UCLA game, SC was up early and then, just couldn't hang in there really in the trenches. So I agree with you. I don't know, though, Coach, how much that's going to change. I think Riley is Riley. He's 8-9 years in his career. He's gone about it a certain way. I think that's kind of in his blood. It'll be interesting to see if he can kind of evolve. But then the question becomes, do you almost lose the aggressiveness? Because there's a fine line there where with a lot of these air raid guys, once they sort of put the foot off the gas, then it's hard to put the gas back on. And in terms of kind of taking the air out of the ball and taking the clock away, you're almost sort of playing prevent offense, right? And which is so counter to these guys. So I agree with you. I think game management is going to be a very delicate balance with Lincoln this year. We'll see. I think it's going to be hard given the DNA. And then number 2, Coach, the stops, right? I think that was a great stat. That felt very Caleb Williams-centric, though, I think. 4 stops a game, given how magical Caleb was in terms of evading the pass rush. He was so good on third down. It was just so hard to stop that SC offense. I think in a more structured offense, even though it's going to be prolific, I think that number probably goes from 4 to 6. I think you probably need 6 stops a game this year moving forward. And I think the question is, can they? I think they're going to be better than 4 stops a game, but are they going to be good enough for 6 stops a game? I think is going to be really where a lot of these games come down to. Obviously, I think scheme's going to play a big role. The weight gain is going to play a big role. But, you got to see it on the field and you got to see it all together. And so I think that's going to be the huge question moving forward. And I think this is going to do SC a ton of good in terms of being able to play LSU right away, because win or lose, you understand where you match up with an elite program and elite competition. And that now becomes the measuring stick by which you can go and use as a barometer over the course of the first half of the season. If you remember, Coach, last year, the big criticism was they didn't play anybody the first 6 weeks of the season. The schedule was an absolute joke. It was one of the easiest schedules in the country, and that's why the 6-0 felt like fool's gold. And then the moment that schedule turned and they had 5 out of 6 really tough teams, guess what? They lost to all 5 tough teams that they played. And essentially that's how the season shook out. And we expected that at the very beginning, where I was like, I've never seen a season where the first 6 is so easy and the last 6 is so difficult. This seems a little bit more spread out. But I think having some tough competition early, particularly in a 12-team scenario, is going to be very beneficial to USC. I think the other piece here, Coach, is going to be how is this offensive line also going to emerge over the course of this season? I think that's going to be a big question mark for me. So much has been on the defensive line and the defensive trenches, and we just sort of automatically assume that Lincoln Riley is going to put 40 a game. Why not? Of course. But how is this offensive line going to adjust to new Big Ten style of football? And also, how easily is USC going to be able to run the football as a result of that? Because again, Lincoln Riley offenses are predicated on balance. He's humming when it's same number of throws, same number of runs. You're at about 300, 320 yards passing, 200 to 250 yards rushing. That's how you get your 550 or 570. So is USC going to be able to maintain that balance? And that balance only exists with really good offensive line play. We love that left side of the line. We love Paige. We love Pregnon, Monheim. So that left side is, I think, really where the strength of this team is. Question is going to be, is this right side also going to be ready? And can that left side stay healthy?
Who is going to be the right tackle? Because I know Noah is the guard. Who's the tackle? I will say this. I like Noah, and I think the offensive line is going to be better than expected, but they're still young and they're still growing, right? The Monheim is gone. Pregnon's probably going to go to the NFL. All the rest of the guys are coming back. So that's why I say this is a big foundation year. But neither here nor there.
Mason Murphy,
Murphy, there we go. Mason Murphy, right tackle. And we have to remember this. The right side is more of your run side, your power side. Like, you're not protected. It's your front side. That's where you run it to for right-handers, for handoffs and things like that. The back side, the left side, is where it really matters, because when you drop back to pass, you got to protect the quarterback's blind side. So our tackles get paid a lot of money, this and that. Neither here nor there. Let's get into the meat and bones of today, man. So, like we said, 72 hours away. Tomorrow is the most important day of the week. The day before. If they don't get it on Friday, they're not going to get it at all, right? Like, there's walk through Saturday, Sunday they're playing the game. You don't get it on Friday, then you don't get it on all. The issue I do have, I want to mention this. They're playing on Sunday, and then they're playing again next Saturday. Whoever set that up is just flat out not putting them in the best situation possible. And that's the things that bother me. You have them play on Sunday. They take Monday off because they have to take Monday off. Tuesday, Wednesday is your only practice. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is your only practice days. Walk through Friday. You're playing again Saturday. It's Utah State. It's a tough team, though. Utah State's not a pushover. Like, they're going to come play tough football, always have their history. We understand the talent, things like that. But still, that game is not going to go how people expect because of the preparation time and the recovery time. But we'll talk about that next week. I don't like that. I don't know who did that. Whoever did that that's not fair to those kids. They should have played the game Saturday if they were going to play another game this week. But there is a game this week. They're playing the LSU. They're playing the LSU Tigers. The Cats are coming down to Vegas. They're coming to, well, it's not the West Coast. They're coming to the desert. Trojans are going to the desert. This is going to be interesting for me. And it's interesting for me because I could be wrong. But what I expect out of Lincoln Riley in this offense is a whole different offense, right? Miller Moss can run, but Miller Moss isn't Caleb Williams. But what Miller Moss can do is he could throw the ball and he could sit in the pocket. He could step up and he could make decisions. Miller Moss can be a gunslinger, and we saw it. And the thing I like about gunslingers is that they have very short memories, right? So he may see a pick, and he'll come out and throw 70 yards, right? Very short memories. But Miller Moss lets the play develop. And where everybody's talking wide receiver one, and we talked about this in the past, I think at this point in time in life, I don't think Zach Branch will be wide receiver number one. I don't think he'll be wide receiver number two. He may be number three. They're going to force him the ball because they want him to be that guy, and he's elusive. I'm not taking any athletic ability. Let me say this. I'm not taking any athletic ability from Zachariah Branch. But I will say this. Kobe Lane is pretty good. Kyron Hudson is pretty good. Makai Lemon is pretty good. Big Deuce is pretty good. Kyle Ford, maybe Kyle Ford could. Well, Zach Branch is better than Kyle Ford, but Kyle Ford's also in that room. We got the kid from some random D3. We don't know how good he is. It's a loaded room. I don't know why he's there, but he shouldn't even begin the conversation. I apologize for bringing that up. But Jacoby Lane, right? Jacoby Lane's your guy. Makai Lemon's my guy. Kyron Hudson is somebody else's guy. Big Deuce Robinson is somebody else's guy. Kyle Ford's a vet presence who's played in the offense before and is coming back. He could probably get open, right? This is fifth year. He's going on grad year. This is not going to be Caleb Williams' offense. This is going to be a more pass development offense. This might be a lot more run. You might see a lot more power. You might see a balance 50-50, like you say. But I want to set the expectation of the elusiveness of quarterback this year is not going to be run the ball, scramble, get open. The elusiveness of quarterback this year is going to be, oh, that was a damn good throw. Oh, he hit him again. Oh, he's open. Let's make that happen. Like, move down the field. And that's what I mean by control the game. He's going to take what it gives him. We're going to get to the next down, right? And do it that way, and then you go down and score like that. Is he going to put the pedal on? 100%. But it's going to be a different offense that you're going to see this year. Not in a bad way. It's just going to be different. You're going to see a lot of passing yards, but you're going to see a lot of downfield development plays. I think Miller Moss' arm is really underrated. I saw him make some throws in person that was really good. Off the opposite hash, hitting post routes down the seam. Very good two balls. His two balls were amazing. He hit a Jacoby Lane touchdown against Louisville. Great two ball right over the safety. So this is going to be a more developed offense. And when I say developed, I mean pass routes are developed. He's going to take his time, post corner, off the sword route, daggers, whatever it is. He's going to be a little bit more patient, and that gives Lincoln Riley a little bit more chance to expand the playbook, and you see a lot more creative stuff. That's what I expect to see out of the offense this year. What about you, man? What do you expect to see?
Yeah, Coach. I mean, I think it's a great point. Obviously, Miller Moss is someone who I think there's a willingness to remain in the structure. I think the big critique of Caleb Williams last year was, hey, he can make all the throws. I think there was a little bit of a question with the deep ball over the course of the last 2 years, but he can make all the throws. The question was, his willingness to kind of stay on script, stay within the structure of the offense, and not improv to the point where then he was wanting to create a home run every time, right? I mean, that was a little bit of the challenge. He'd hold on to the ball a lot. Most of the time, it all worked out in his favor. But there were moments where you wondered, hey, he had this for 4. He had this for 6. It's easy yards, just kind of keep it moving. And he was always trying to make the spectacular play. I think Moss is going to be one of those where it's going to be a lot more 1-2 out. I think there's going to be a lot more of that. Just given, I think, how he sort of approaches his preparation. As you mentioned, he made a lot of terrific throws in the bowl game. The 3 to Jacoby Lane kind of stand out. Obviously, you mentioned kind of opposite field. So I think there's going to be sort of a rhythm with this offense that I think is going to be a little bit different. And I think it's going to allow Lincoln Riley to go more no huddle. I think it's, the combination of Moss being able to get the ball out quickly and the fact that you can now communicate right into the players' helmets. I think you're going to go no huddle a lot more. Now, I think that doesn't mean it's going to be sort of Oregon Chip Kelly type of, blur offenses, but I think they're going to be able to do a lot more kind of pre-snap, be able to make some changes to the play and to kind of keep defenses on their heels without having to huddle. So I think a little bit more of that. And I think that's what Miller Moss brings to the table in that particular way. But on the flip side, Coach, to the earlier point, this is now really predicated on really good offensive line play. Because if the offensive line plays the way, if they struggle and play the way they played in spots last year, the way they played in spots the year before, and just relied on Caleb's brilliance and improvisational skills to get out of all of these Houdini-like situations, that's where the offense is going to get off schedule. Because Miller Moss is a good runner, but I think it was the way Jake Crane said, the way our LSU guests, who were absolutely phenomenal, Coach. We had back-to-back terrific guests. And Miller Moss, from an SEC perspective, reminds them a lot of Stetson Bennett, where it's kind of a guy who can make all the platform throws, off-platform as well, and he's kind of sneaky good in terms of, that 1 or 2 big scrambles a game. That's kind of what Miller Moss is. But Miller Moss isn't going to necessarily be a guy that's going to dance back there to buy more time. It's going to be either get the ball out or take off and run, or unfortunately, he's going to have to go and take the sack. So I think that's the good in terms of the offense. More no huddle, more decisiveness. I think there's going to be kind of a cadence and a rhythm that we haven't seen the last couple of years. On the flip side, this team is going to be more susceptible than ever to really good offensive line play.
Who's wide receiver number 1 for you?
Jacoby. That's my guy. Jacoby Lane is my guy. I think he's sort of built like, he reminds me so much of Jarrett, Dwayne Jarrett, freshman Dwayne Jarrett, back in, kind of 05 and so forth, 04, 05, 06. And so to me, it's going to be, Jacoby is kind of my guy. I think where he's going to settle in. And I do think, Coach, regardless of how much you sort of pepper the ball around in big games and big moments, you need to know who your number 1 guy is and who your number 2 guys. For 90% of the game, even 95% of the game, it doesn't matter. But for 5% of the game, it really matters. And that 5% invariably decides the outcome of the game. So that's why it's really important to kind of have a pecking order established. You may not always use the pecking order. You rarely will. But when you really need it, you need to be able to have that clarity of thought.
That's called a game changer.
Totally.
That's called what's funny? I'm going to go off on a tangent real quick. Everybody's putting Mike McCarthy on the hot seat. And when I was like, they have nobody besides Micah Parsons going to the Hall of Fame. They don't have any game changers on that roster. And he's won 3 years of 12. He's won 12 football games in the NFL for 3 years. And people are saying he needs to be fired. You give him a very average roster, makes the playoffs, win 12 games, and he needs to be fired. Like, he's done everything. He's succeeded with what he has. You know what I mean? Like, there's no game changers. There's nobody that keeps you up at night on offense, and there's one guy on defense. Like, that's so crazy. But that's what USC needs. They need guys to keep the defensive coordinators up. And I've been hearing that I'm gonna say it wrong because What's Arnold is the defensive back?
Achilles.
Akili Arnold is very good. I've been hearing that Ramsey is very good.
Yeah.
I've been there, and those are just camp reports. And, camp reports they're
No, I
always
mean, I saw Ramsey up close and personal last year as well, Coach,
yeah.
and I can tell you, his cerebral approach to the game is very significant. He's just as comfortable coming down in the box as he is sort of dropping back. Really, a chess player there at safety. I think Ramsey is going to be the captain of that secondary, in my opinion, and really be that glue on the back end.
So defensively, I've been watching a lot of film, and I've been watching a lot more UCLA on defense than I have been watching LSU on defense. This is a challenge straight out of the box. And Brian Kelly, and I get why. I've never really sat down and watched Brian Kelly until I started watching this film. And Brian Kelly is an offensive genius. And the way Brian Kelly gets guys open is deception. He'll run a guy across and then bring a guy back across, pops him open. Same thing with the running game. He uses a lot of deception to get guys open. And he's really good at it, and he calls it at the right time, and he does a really good job with it. Danton Lynn is my guy. And let me tell you why. He plays +1 consistently. You bring 7 in the box, he has 8. You bring 9, he's going to have 10. He's always going to be +1. His numbers are always right. The only thing is he gets in these situations at time where he does lighten the box up a little bit. And it seems like every time he lightened the box up, there was a run. I don't know why he does it. I never had the chance to sit down with him. But he does a lot of sound things, and he puts guys in the best position possible to make plays. I didn't really see him walk linebackers out and put them over receivers, right? And I will say this: I didn't know UCLA enough, and maybe it was a linebacker. I didn't really look like, oh, was this a linebacker last year? I didn't care. It looked like a DB, so I was like, he doesn't really walk guys out. I do believe that this was a good hire. I do believe that he's going to put his guys in the best situation possible to make good plays. Defensively, they have to be very disciplined because of the misdirection stuff that Brian Kelly throws at them. This is going to be a test because supposedly they have the best O-line. I've heard that 3 schools have the best O-line in the country, and Florida State apparently had the best defensive line in the country, and we saw what happened last week, but neither here nor there. I think that, like you said, this is a big measuring stick for the defense. And if the defense holds them, you know what I mean? The line is moving. They're at LSU's the 4.5 favorite now. They started off at 6. They're slowly moving to 4. But the key is they have to make stops. I think they'll be put in the best position to make stops. And if they are, I don't know how he's going to call this game, but they are put in the best position possible to make stops. It's going to come down to talent, right? And I will say this: if he calls a good game and they still get beat, the talent's not good enough, and they still need to recruit harder on defense. This is a big measuring stick for USC's defense in the box to see if they're talented enough to be national champions. We know the secondary. They did very good on the secondary, right? But are they going to be good enough to make the big play and make the stop? And if not, we're going to find out on Sunday. What do you think?
Yeah, Coach. I mean, I think it's a good point. I think that the game is going to be decided by this matchup here. It's going to be LSU's offensive line with this SC front 7, because by all indications, and I think we have no reason to question this, is that LSU is one of the best. They're going to be in the running for best offensive line in the country this year. They've got Will Campbell and Emory Jones, 2 bona fide first-round picks. Some people believe both those guys are top 15 picks. They got 2 more guys who are going to be NFL picks over the course of a 7-round draft. And those 4 guys in totality started 51 of a possible 52 games last year. So you're bringing back continuity. You're bringing back a lot of skill and ability. And so this is what's going to sort of anchor this team moving forward. And so the question becomes, can all this girth and all of this momentum that USC's gotten on the defensive line, can they make a dent into this LSU offensive line? Because if Nussmeier has all this time in the world to throw the ball, he's always on schedule, it's going to open up running games, running lanes, and B, I think Nussmeier, if he's got time, I don't care how good your secondary is, after about 5 or 6 seconds, any secondary is going to break down, by and large. So that's going to be where this game is won and lost. D'Anton Lynn plays a game of chess. It really is, where he's got one queen on the board, and then he plays, to your point, Coach, a lot of deception with all the other pieces. I think he really uses confusion in the secondary as one of his calling cards. And then he sort of plays around with the linebackers. He kind of uses a lot of personnel in the secondary to create crowds, to create confusion, to create sort of the illusion where there's one extra guy everywhere. And then he uses his linebackers to really help and cheat on the running game. But he's able to do that when he's got his queen on the board. And usually that queen is some combination of linebacker and edge that he can move around anywhere, position anywhere, and that individual is going to be able to, more often than not, get significant pressure on the quarterback. So he truly is playing chess when you look at the pieces. Last year, that queen on the board was Leatu Latu. This year, the big question is going to be, who is going to be that queen on the board for D'Anton Lynn to be able to do all of the other deceptive things that he wants to? And I think, by all indications, it's going to be Shelby. I mean, Bear is going to be sort of that anchor on the interior. People are wondering who's going to be with Bear on the interior. Is it Abasari? Is it going to be Clifton? Who's really going to emerge? I know what the depth chart says right now, but who's going to emerge over the course of the season? People are getting high on Lucas, particularly with how his body has transformed. But I think this year's Latu for D'Anton Lynn, this year's queen, the 2024 queen, I think is going to be Shelby. And I think if he can get Shelby in those spots where he's kind of that rover, backer, edge rusher, and move him around and get consistent pressure, then he can have the linebackers cheat in the box, and then he can have the secondary drift back with some extra guys and create all this confusion. That's the game that D'Anton Lynn wants to play, because if that queen doesn't emerge, then, and if you can't get that pressure, now all of a sudden having linebackers in the box actually sort of exposes you on the back end in ways that you don't want. And, confusion is fine, but confusion only works for 2 or 3 seconds, 3.5 seconds, but if you're back there for 4 or 5 seconds, all the confusion in the world is going to break down with gaps in the passing lane. So that's going to be the big question here, Coach. This offensive line of LSU versus this defensive line of USC. If SC can even keep it close and sort of competitive in terms of that matchup, they're going to be in a great spot to be able to win this game. If LSU decisively wins that matchup, you got to think LSU is going to win this game.
Yeah, just eliminate the big play. Everything take care of itself, right? So before we close it out, give me a score. What do you got?
Coach, I think it's going to be very compelling, back and forth. We've talked the last couple of weeks. This is that Spider-Man meme. You're sort of looking at your brother in the mirror, and tons of similarities on all sides of the ball. I think ultimately this is going to be a one-score game. It's going to come down to late in the second half of the fourth quarter. It's going to be a play. I think SC's secondary will find a way to make that critical interception late in the game and be able to pull this off. I like SC 34-31 here in this opener in what should be a wildly entertaining game.
Yeah, 27-24 USC on a field goal. That's how I'm going to end it out. 24-27 USC on a field goal. I'm never going to pick a high-scoring game because I'm a defensive guy. So there's going to be some stops. And if it is a secondary, more power to it.
Well, Coach, that 1 year, 2 years ago at the Victory Bell game, you predicted 13-10, and it was 48-45 was the final, so let's see how it shakes out.
I said it's going to be a weird day. It was one of those weird days. I thought it was going to be a weird day, 30, and hey, I'm not a fortune teller. You know what I mean? But I want to see 27-24 USC wins. You know what I mean? And then we'll get ready, go play Utah State, take a break, and go to Ann Arbor. So The season's rolling. The ship is taking off. It's either you get on the ship or you're going to be left on the dock. Man, I appreciate you, man, putting one together. It's our time. We got a lot going. Getting ready for, I guess it'll be Victory Monday, right? Get ready for Victory Monday.
Victory Monday.
Get that all taken care of. If you guys want to follow more football, go to LAFBnetwork.com. You can go see the Madman on this podcast who cheers for the school on the other side of town. Go if you want to listen to the Rams. We got Skinny T and our man Ryan Dyrud for the Skinny's T's Rams, and then we also got the Chargers on Chargers Unleashed. I appreciate you guys. It's so exciting. I can't wait to talk to you guys on Monday. Bring your questions, bring your answers. Hopefully we're celebrating and we're talking good. We're getting ready for Utah. I could bitch about how now we got to play Utah State and it's not going to be a great game. And the AD fucked this one up. So let's talk about that one. Let's talk about that more on Sunday and how good USC potentially can be. I appreciate you, Jamal. Appreciate all the fans. It's the Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast. You guys know how it goes. Live free, fight on.